How did an orphan end up building one of the most spectacular mansions of the Victorian era and end up losing it all? Hi everyone, Ken here. Today we are heading out to an unlikely location to uncover Terrace Hill. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. Benjamin Allen did not start life with advantages of any kind. In 1829, he was born in Indiana and orphaned at only 4 years old. Lacking formal education, young Allen grew up with relatives in Ohio, but he possessed ambition and grit. At 17, he briefly enlisted in military service, and by 19, he arrived in the frontier settlement of Fort Des Moines to claim a small inheritance from his late uncle. In Des Moines, Allen quickly proved himself a born entrepreneur. He started as a merchant, opening a general store and a steam-powered sawmill to supply the growing town. Restless and shrewd, he branched into every opportunity the young city offered. By 1855, at just 26 years old, Allen ventured into banking and real estate, acquiring large tracts of land, including the very hilltop where he would later build Terrace Hill. At one point, his Iowa landholdings sprawled over at least 93 square miles, and he was soon known as a bold investor willing to buy, build, or finance almost anything. During these years, Des Moines was transforming from a frontier fort into a proper city, and Allen was at the forefront of that transformation. When a nationwide financial panic struck in 1857, he became a local hero by propping up struggling businesses, personally guaranteeing the debts of his neighbors to keep them afloat. This gesture earned him immense goodwill in the community, and by 1860, thanks in part to Allen's enterprises and investments, Des Moines had grown from a tiny outpost of 200 people to a town of nearly 4,000 residents. Allen's prominence only grew as he helped attract commerce and infrastructure to the region. He co-founded banks and dabbled in coal mining, insurance, and transportation, basically any business that could thrive in the young state. By the end of the decade, he had earned a seat as a state senator and proudly championed legislation to build a brand new Iowa state capital in Des Moines, further cementing the city's importance. Everything he touched seemed to turn to gold, or so it appeared. The capstone of Allen's business exploits was railroads. In 1865, he helped organize the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad's push into Iowa via Des Moines. He had been entrusted by a court to hold over $500,000 in railroad bonds, a huge sum at the time, to finance the expansion. Ever the opportunist, Allen bought up land along the proposed rail lines, platted new town sites along the route, and sold them for hefty profits. In an era before Iowa had many wealthy men, Allen stood out as the state's first millionaire, with an estimated fortune between $4 million and $12 million at its peak. Not bad for a poor orphan with no formal schooling. As his wealth and family grew, Allen set out to build a home that would reflect his lofty status. The result was Terrace Hill, an ornate mansion that would become Iowa's most famous house. Construction began in 1866, right at the height of Allen's fortune. He had purchased a 29-acre hilltop on the western edge of Des Moines years earlier, envisioning a grand estate overlooking the city. Now he would transform that hill into his personal castle. Allen spared no expense in creating the finest residence in Iowa. He hired William W. Boyington, a noted Chicago architect, to design the mansion. Boyington was renowned for his fashionable designs. He would later design the famed Chicago Water Tower, and for Terrace Hill, he drew up plans in the French Second Empire style, which was the height of elegance at the time. Indeed, Terrace Hill would not have looked out of place on a boulevard in Paris. Its defining feature was a steep mansard roof crowned by a 90-foot tower that offered commanding views of the Iowa prairie. Inside, Terrace Hill boasted every modern convenience available in the 1860s. Allen made sure his home was at the cutting edge of comfort and technology. The mansion featured hot and cold running water, an unheard of luxury on the frontier. It had indoor restrooms and was lit by gas lighting throughout. Most astonishing for 1869, Terrace Hill even included a working elevator to carry guests between floors. All of these innovations made the house exceptionally modern for its day. The first and second floors were decorated in the finest East Coast fashions, with plush carpets, heavy draperies, and custom-made furniture shipped in from New York. No detail was too fine. 4 marble fireplace mantels were specially carved by a Chicago firm, and a grand sweeping staircase was built by local craftsmen. By the time Terrace Hill was completed in 1869, it had cost approximately $250,000, the modern equivalent of nearly $6 million. The mansion instantly became the marvel of Iowa. When the Allen family moved in, Des Moines residents would stroll past just to gawk at the palatial home rising above Grand Avenue. At the time, the property sat on the outskirts of town, but as Des Moines expanded westward, Terrace Hill eventually found itself nearly in the city's center. For a moment in the late 1860s, B.F. Allen and Terrace Hill symbolized the peak of Iowa's Gilded Age, a self-made man living in gilded luxury presiding over Des Moines from his mansion on the hill. Allen's charmed life, however, came crashing down almost as spectacularly as it had risen. In May 1873, trouble came calling. By then, cracks had begun to show in Allen's financial empire. To fuel his many ventures, he had borrowed heavily from the railroad trust funds he was supposed to safeguard. Essentially, Allen used other people's money to speculate on land and business deals of his own. It was a risky house of cards, and the economic panic of 1873 put everything in jeopardy. When the railroad money finally had to be paid back, Allen couldn't return the funds. They were gone, sunk into bad investments. Desperate to cover the massive shortfall, he made a bold last-ditch move. He bought a controlling interest in the Cook County National Bank of Chicago in 1873 and installed himself as president. His hope was to use this bank and his remaining assets to somehow refill the missing railroad money and appease creditors, but this gamble failed disastrously. The bank collapsed in January 1875, and with it, Allen's fortune collapsed as well. Many local Iowans, even those who lost money in the debacle, continued to regard him with sympathy as a man who had overreached but not outright swindled. Nonetheless, the consequences were severe. To satisfy creditors, Allen's assets were liquidated through the late 1870s and early 1880s. In 1884, he reluctantly sold Terrace Hill and the remaining 8-acre core of the property to a local businessman, Frederick M. Hubble, for $60,000. It passed down through generations of Hubbles until the heirs could no longer afford its upkeep. By 1970, the need for an official governor's residence in Iowa had become pressing. The old governor's house was too small for modern needs. This gave Terrace Hill a new chance at life. The Hubble family agreed to donate Terrace Hill to the state of Iowa in 1971. It was an extraordinarily generous gift, ensuring the mansion would be preserved for public use rather than potentially demolished by developers. After the donation, a careful restoration and planning process began. Rather than convert Terrace Hill entirely into a museum or office, state leaders decided it could serve dual roles, a home for Iowa's first family and a historic site for all Iowans to share. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Terrace Hill? Let me know down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.